go again. Wow. Wow. I can't believe that. I got cut off somehow. I don't know if it was the OBF software that did a burp. I don't know if there's anybody there right now, but let me what happens if I just move this? No. Oh, well, I don't know what I'm doing now. I guess I have to go here. All right, and then I'll have to shut this off and then go back over here. I think I know what I'm doing. Oh, I'm shutting off the wrong thing. Duh. Well, I got discombobulated by that when I went back to the chat room and I was disconnected. But I'm going now. And I'm still streaming. All right, okay, everything seems to be working again. How long was I out? Maybe you could have another device running like a phone or tablet so you can check that the show is running correctly. Oh, yeah? Well, I can get around that by just using, partial screens. I made my screen into the whole desktop. So I don't know how long I was out. Do you have any idea? Deport? Earth to Sawyer. Hey. Hello. Looks like I was gone for quite a while, maybe. Wow, I wonder if the lower forces really don't want me talking about this. Remember they cut me off before? Because what I'm going to get to talking about is the way that Mark and Sarah say that there's nothing to do now. So I don't know. Okay, you just went live on YouTube about 4 minutes ago. But how long was I out if you were here the whole time? Do you know approximately how long I was not, you weren't seeing anything happening or hearing anything happening? I just want to get an idea of where I should go back to. in that, because I'm going to keep on trying to do it, but I'm going to try to do it smarter so I can see if I get cut off again. I didn't get that message from OBS, so wasn't that kind of a cutoff? There might be somebody in YouTube laughing at me now. So be it. Or it might have been, accidental. Or accidental caused by software glitch or, But Luciferians can do that, Well, they can do things. They can send people thoughts. And it can overcome them. They can go right next to them in their chair and influence them, and they won't be able to see them. Because they have souls that were given to them and they grew to a certain degree from the next level. Plasma consistency. Now they might have made that more dense than plasma, or a more dense form of plasma. I don't know what plasma density can be before it I don't know. The show was up since, I believe, 10:30 Pacific time, but it was just a waiting screen. 10:30. 1:30. Right, I started the show at 1:30. Maybe you weren't paying attention to the whole thing. I was just trying to find out when I stopped talking about Mark and Sarah's interview. Didn't you see any of Mark and Sarah's interview? On IdeoLogs? Or maybe you weren't paying attention because you were doing other things. So I understand that. I'm not trying to put you on the spot with it. If you don't know, you don't know. Or anybody else doesn't know. For anybody that just joined me, I was going along. This time it wasn't my fault. Except I could have done a better job in keeping view of the chat room and or the live stream ticker going by. Nothing. Hello, Ollie. Nothing. You saw nothing of that. Holy smokes. All right, I'll do it again. I mean, I know I talked for quite a while before I started talking about the IdeoLog thing. It wasn't that long ago. It's just so exhausting to pull things in twice. All right, I'm going to try to set it up to where I'm going back to it. So there's nothing in the chat room to talk about. Wow, it's bizarre. Well, it's not that bizarre. I mean, stranger things have happened. But I've got to be able to keep this over here. Put this over there. This over here. Okay, and then turn this on. I kind of wanted that needs to be full screen. There you go. That's decent. Except that dough is hidden there. So just make me smaller. Okay. So I'm going to recap, but I'm going to play this. What the heck is that? Wait a minute, I've got to get this other screen up there. Okay, I'm still ticking away. Oh, this is what I should do. Okay. All right. Now I'm going to, well, I've got to be able to see the volume. Okay. All right, I'm sorry I took that time there, but I'm going to continue where I left off, where I started. I'm going to start with the IdeoLog video that you see on your screen there, which is an interview that was done with Mark and Sarah through email, and that the individual that runs the YouTube channel, he got an actress to do the part of Mark and Sarah. I recognized right away that it wasn't Sarah's voice, and then I saw that he wrote down that he had an actress doing that. And I commented with him and told him that there were some inaccuracies in there, and he said he would consider doing another episode with the corrections. So when I'm finished doing this, I'm going to write it up. I'm going to talk to Mark and Sarah about it, if I can. And then I'm going to go to him with it and and do another show with him, an interview with him. So I'm going to play it now. I'm still ticking away, I see, and I can see the chat room, and I can see how many concurrent users there are. So that shouldn't change.
T and those students, it was clear and obvious the gift they gave me.
An organization that originated... Heaven's Gate was an organization that originated in 1975 and lasted until 1997. They're known for the mass suicide of 39 people that they encouraged and participated in, although Heaven's Gate refutes that it was a suicide. 2 members were designated to maintain the Heaven's Gate website and email, and they kindly agreed to do an interview. To clear up a few terms before we start, T and Do were the founders of Heaven's Gate. They believed that T and Do were sent back to Earth as missionaries of the next level, or the Kingdom of Heaven, in the early 1970s, and served as representatives of that level. T was responsible for Do, and Do claimed to be the return of the individual who was once known as Jesus. I think we should start by clarifying, you don't support suicide in the modern day. Why is that?
Suicide is fruitless. You just have to start again in your next reincarnation on this planet and repeat the same lessons again. You'll be back to the same life lessons that brought you to your reasons for suicide in this life.
How did you find out about Heaven's Gate?
Okay, so I want to comment on that. Are you still there, everybody? Let me see here. Why can't I? Okay, let me see if you're still there. My screen goes away each time I do this because of the updating of the screen behind it, which is my OBS screen. So still don't have that in the maximum ability to do it. I've got 2 screens, 2 computer screens, so I do have some flexibility in that regard. Anyway, but I see you're still ticking away, and yeah, that's fine. You can type at 3 SPM to get my attention. I'm just going to try harder to, do it this way now, to where I can go back and forth, before I say much about something and see if we're still ticking away and if the sound is on. So what they said is that suicide was fruitless, and I wouldn't use that word because Do didn't use that word. But you can see in Stan Mody's teachings, not Stan Mody's teachings, in Stan Mody's documentation of T and Do's teachings in the Heaven's Gate book, that he says that for humans that still have lessons to learn, suicide is not a good choice. And you can go read it yourself and see, because you need a vehicle in order to learn your lessons, our lessons, all of us. I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about all of us. We need to experience things. We need to be able to say no to that, or no to this, or yes to that, yes to that. And that's how we get growth. We need to have interactions with people. Those interactions might only end up being on the internet, but that's still interactions with people, because people will push our buttons, even if we're just communicating over the internet. So that we can learn to respond to people when they put us down or curse us out or whatever it is in a positive way. And a lot of times the way we learn to do that is by, and I'm not saying I'm 100% at this, but I have had some practice of just, not pushing the send button or hitting the return button on a comment or something until if I know that it's affecting me, my vibration. If I'm mad about it, then I can not hit that button. Or if I write something, and then I look in and I see that there's sarcasm in it, or ranking them out or something, or trying to put them down, except for telling them that what they said was not true. That's not. I'm not trying to put somebody down by saying that. But if it's actually something they're saying that's false, then they need to be told that. And so that other people also that view that, if it's in the public sphere, that they, and so that even those people can come back to that information. If it was even not in the full public view, it was just like a message between people or an email. Because that person could always come back to that at another time and wonder what we said to them. And wonder what I said to them. In other words, somebody, when you have like an argument or something, that can stay with people, even though they can be, totally hateful about you. But if you don't apply hate, like fight fire with fire in that regard, then there's a chance that person could be turned around from the negativity about you and potentially even Tiendo. If you're somebody that is standing up for Tiendo. I've had that happen. I've had people tell me that I was, dead against believing anything about this, and I don't know if somebody said, but your responses, I felt like were interesting, and so I wanted to hear more. And so, that's all we can do. I mean, that's what the best we can do with anybody, is give them the opportunity, the best we can, by demonstrating the behaviors and ways of Tiendo. And they were very guarded with their words. They had a lot of restraint. They taught us that in the very beginning. But I want to get to, where we weren't we weren't talking for a number of days. And then they added keywords, and we were only using keywords. And then, they weren't, and then it opened up a little bit to be only talk about things that were based on your tasks that needed to be said. So we didn't do chit-chatting, and no gossiping, and no talking about the past with other people or yourself. Even thinking about the past was taboo, but for this classroom, I mean, taboo meaning not taboo. That's the wrong word for it. Because what it was we didn't have instruction to think about the past, but there was no monitor on us. We didn't go to somebody and have them grill us and say, did you talk about the past today? How about in the last hour? Your partner didn't have any instructions to grill each other. We only really respond to our partners when one would ask the other for help. And that was supposed to be done frequently, but sometimes Tiendo would stimulate us doing that frequently, more frequently than we were doing it. Asking our partner to tell us if we were doing anything or saying anything, or we had an expression on our face or anything about us that seemed to be not according to procedure and different than the way Tiendo were teaching for us to maintain. Like we were taught to maintain a pleasant countenance. Not overly bubbly or not overly depressed, a pleasant countenance, and to deal with our problems, even pains of the vehicle that could have, aches and pains. Not that we were they told us to grin and bear everything. No, they didn't. When we had a problem, we had a pain of some sort, like tooth pain, like I had, I would write a note saying I have tooth pain. You wouldn't say I write a note, I need to go to the dentist and get a filling, or I need to go to the dentist and get a root canal, because somebody told me, a long time ago that that's what I was going to need in that tooth. So I just wanted to let you know that I had already checked it out. If we said all that, that would be a lesson. I didn't say all that to them. I didn't have that experience with somebody told me something in the future, except the impacted wisdom teeth, but that never ended up harming me. But because they weren't so bad, and they weren't trying to come out, so hopefully they continue to stop. But anyway, but I did end up having tooth pain. So the procedure for writing about the things that we're concerned about is to not give a solution. That's how you use your older member's mind. But the student not. It's like the professor says, okay, you got to mix hydrochloric acid with this other ingredient, okay, and tell me what you see, okay, and all of a sudden it starts to you're starting to like smell some fumes and getting lightheaded. And you say, so you say to the professor, I can't do that experiment. I can't do this experiment. Stop the experiment. I can't do this experiment. Instead of saying to the professor, I'm starting to feel a little lightheaded, and then the professor can say, well, maybe you need to step out of the room, step outside and get some fresh air. Instead of stopping the experiment so that everybody else has to stop it. And then maybe next step we can give you a really good mask so that you're not breathing in the fumes. See, that would be the next level, coming up with the solution. We might think we have the solution, but it's not according to next level instructions. And that's the way we demonstrate using their mind. It's practical. It's not an etheric kind of imagination kind of thing of, do my will, like Jesus said, which I'm going to get to later because of something else that Mark and Sarah said in that video. But they made it sound like, it was like automatic to come back through reincarnation. But that maybe was with the inflection of the voice of the person that was, doing the actressing. Didn't know how to make it, I guess, generic to where it didn't have some inflection. But maybe I'm just interpreting her inflection in a way that other people don't. So it might be my issue with that. But whether it was automatic, because it's not automatic that we come back in a reincarnation. But I guess, in a sense, by them just saying that you're just going to have to come back in a new reincarnation, is saying it in such words that sound automatic to me. That we can expect that to happen. But that we could overcome now, and then we won't have to experience that same thing again. But we do have to experience the same thing again, because when we come back into a human vehicle, the things that we haven't overcome need to be repeated. Even the things that we think we have overcome get repeated. Because sometimes there's more overcoming to do. A lot of times there's more overcoming to do. Because let's say we got to a point, let's take sexuality as an example. Let's say in one lifetime we didn't have any interest in sexuality. Maybe we did early in life or whatever, and then we got to a point to where we were still able to be sexual, but we just didn't want to pursue it anymore. Okay? That's overcoming a degree of being addicted to sexuality. Okay? But that doesn't mean that, we could have still, sometimes, daydreamed about a time when we had sex, or we could, just use internet sexuality, like watching porn or something, or we could just allow thoughts in our heads, to think sexual things, and even not even bring it to orgasm, but but just be getting a little buzz from doing so. See, so the overcoming we would need to come back for would be to completely overcome it, so that we're not even having thoughts about it. I'm just trying to give you examples that are from experience and from what, because T and Do, when they were teaching things, weren't saying everything they were able to give us. Now, I can't read into things unless I have a lot of examples in my mind of other things that are related to that. And I try to tell you the things that T and Do said, as opposed to the things that I'm coming up with on my own, which were those examples of sexuality. But what they said that gave me that example was that we had to, and they said this years into being in the classroom, a couple of years at least. No, we were still in houses. We were in houses, which only started in 1982 or 3. So it was like over 7 years before they sent us word that we needed to stop our thoughts of sexuality. Put up the blank card so we don't see those thoughts anymore, and force that thought out of our heads, and then put our minds on something else, so that we're not sitting there waiting for it to see if it's gone. Because sure enough, it'll come back. Because what that is, those thoughts are they're either the emanation of the genetic strain that we have, or they're the emanation of what we experienced in the world from when we were a baby, or they were being attacked upon us by influences that were attracted to us because of the emanation of those thoughts while we were living, and the acting out of those thoughts when we were living, to the degrees that we acted out those human mammalian behaviors, and mammalian. But or they can be from being sent to us by the Luciferian space alien fallen angel souls, who want us to do anything but believe in T and Do. Now, T and Do can regulate their attacks on us, so that we get a little dose of it, and then we get to recover. And they help us recover. But we have to ask for the help. So even if we, fall off the wagon and indulge in something with our mind and or our vehicles that we don't really want to do anymore, until we're dead, we still have the experience to grow in that direction and overcome even wanting those things, but it doesn't mean that the attacks won't go away. Will go away. Because even if we had a castration done, we still potentially have to break the habit of having those thoughts when they occur to us through the influences that want us to continue that behavior. So we can let those thoughts linger. And then we can get to the place to where we even kind of smell it ahead of time. Smell those thoughts coming. Which I think I did experience, and T and Do talked in those terms of smelling influences. But, which I didn't understand at the time when T first brought that up, but I think I do understand it now to be that. So I could be a little bit wrong about that part, about the application of smell to smelling a thought or an influence. I'm not too questioning of that coming from T and Do's mind. It's just a tiny, tiny, tiny question. But maybe you can hear that in Beyond Human tapes or the audio tapes somewhere. And if you do, jot down the time and the tape name, and I want to go listen to it so I can see the context and correct myself if I'm wrong. Because I don't have any interest in being right. I have interest in doing right. And it's between me and my older member how much I do right. Because I'm not the teacher. So it doesn't matter what I do. I could be doing everything in the human kingdom, that there is to do. Which I'm not, but even if I was, I could still talk about, maybe I would lose the more I do. The more you do in the human kingdom, the less mind you have from the next level. And that's just like common sense, because your energy, it takes energy to pay attention to the teachings from the next level. And anybody that's read any of the documents or listened to any of the videos knows that if they really concentrated on it, they were going through some challenges, and that they were distracted by thoughts of this couldn't be true, or that's not true because of this, or I wonder what someone else would say about this. I wonder what my preacher would say about that. Or I wonder if Jesus talked about that. Or Jesus didn't talk about that. You could have, judgment kind of thoughts that said, that didn't come from Jesus' mind. All kinds of thoughts we can get. And so fighting those thoughts off, and the way we fight those thoughts off sometimes is to go back and research it. See if Jesus said it. And that's going to get to another spot that's in this video that I'm trying to talk about. So I'm still ticking here. See if there's anything in the chat room. Holy shit, an hour without talking. Well, at least it started over again, so I can go just delete that YouTube video. That first one. So I'm glad of that. Yeah, you can see that the sound, needs to go back and forth when I click that microphone button. So I haven't explained to everybody, like Jeff, you just came in here within the last 10 minutes or so. Sawyer, did you ever consider castration for yourself? Yes, I did while I was in the classroom. I was with Sorority when we were called to those quarters after we were petitioning individually, didn't know about the other one, petitioning though to give us that option to be castrated. And so though at first, about a year before that, it said, he didn't have any instructions to give us to allow us to do that. And so I put it on the back burner, but I wrote notes sometimes to him saying that if he ever got instructions to allow us to do that, I still want to do it. And so one day he called me and Sorority to the phone, and he said, come to my craft. And we got instructions on where the craft was, or maybe Sorority had been there before. Maybe I was there before, actually. I think I was. I think I was there before setting up a satellite dish on the roof with Lagodi as my partner. Anyway, I don't know if it was the same exact craft, but it was a warehouse in San Clemente where they converted an office to a surgery room, a sterile room. Now, Liv Odie did that because she was a nurse for an orchiectomist, the removal of testicles for cancer. So she learned the procedure, and so she brought all the tools and had the anesthesia and everything there, and local anesthesia, because they didn't need to have a full anesthesia, and then they performed the experiment. And not well, it was they performed the procedure, and Sorority was castrated. And I witnessed it with Doe standing next to me, and I almost passed out when they made the first incision, and there wasn't a lot of blood. And then she snipped the cords that go to it, and then cauterized it, and then sewed them back up. And he was fine for a while, but then the sac started to blow up. She put breather tubes in the incision as she was stitching it up. And for some reason, the tubes weren't allowing anything to come out. So the sac of his testicles, without the testicles in them, blew up. Not blown up like a bomb or anything, but got bigger like a blowfish. I don't know if you've ever seen a blowfish. I used to fish for them with my vehicle's dad. And but they weren't as big as a blowfish would sometimes get. They would sometimes get like as big as a grapefruit. This was like as big as an orange. And like a half, well, not like maybe less than that, maybe more like a lemon. Anyway, but he was moaning because it was painful. And so Doe was upset about that. And he said that we should I've gone too far. He says, you take me to the police because I've gone too far, he said. And Jan Odie and Liv Odie and I were the only other three individuals there from the classroom, because Jan Odie was there as the assistant to Liv Odie, who was doing the surgery, and on the other side of the table from me and Doe, and we said to Doe, no, Doe, we'll handle it. I think we said no to him, that we didn't want to take him to the police. I mean, this wasn't against Sorority's will, and he was an adult. He was in his 40s already. Well, it was about 1991 or 2. Probably 1992. And so I was around 40, and Sorority might have been a little younger than that. Not much, if at all. But so and he'd been in the classroom as long as I had. Over 10 years at that point. More than that, even 15 years. And so I knew that he wanted to do that. There's no question in my mind about it. I mean, Doe even told me that a year before that Sorority and Park already had asked him if they could have the procedure on the same day. I called him on the phone from my job. I was a programmer in Albuquerque. And I called him on the phone because I had this thought that Sorority was going to beat me to the punch. See, it was a competitive kind of thing in my mind. See, that's not from the Next Level's mind. That's from my vehicle's sense of competition, trying to prove to the next level. I mean, it was a good kind of competition in a sense. It's not like I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to beat Sorority to the punch, but I wanted to have the option to do it as well. And so that's why I say it was like a competition. It wasn't like I was wanting to get ahead of sorority. I was wanting to be even with sorority. I just wanted to go the distance in what was, to prove to the next level that I was willing to go the distance, whatever that distance was. Lose my life as well. So I called the craft and I told them I asked them if I could talk to Doe. That was a very unusual thing to do. But the people that were on Central, I think they communicated with the overseers of the craft, probably, or just talked about it among themselves for a second, or for a little bit, and then said, and then I think what they did is called Doe, and then and told me to call back, and so I called back. Well, I'm not sure how that happened. If Doe was in the same craft, he might have been at that time, living in the same craft, because that was kind of close to the downtown of Albuquerque where we were living at that time, where part of the classroom was living north in the outskirts of the last development you could live in before you got out of Albuquerque and you were on your way to Santa Fe. Anyway, so I said to Doe, when I was talking to him on the phone, that I felt like I needed to leave the classroom. And he said, why? And I said, well, I don't want to tell you. And he said, well, is it about what we've been talking about? Because we had been talking for several weeks about that Doe wanted to do that procedure. And he even had us over to his craft, a bunch of the males that were having trouble with sexuality, I think, over to his craft to talk about whether anybody had reservations. And at that time, of having that procedure done for ourselves, and at the time I had no reservations, and but somebody did, and that person ended up leaving the classroom after that. That was Havodi. Havodi's still alive in his vehicle, as far as I know, and I'm in touch with him sometimes. I visited with him a number of times. And anyway, so, but he doesn't want to do anything. Well, I shouldn't say that, because I don't know what he wants right now. Anyway, but I'm not the judge of former classmates. That's still between them and Doe, what they're doing in their lives, in their human lives. But he's still here, so I think he didn't go against Doe. Enough, if he does go against them at all. So, I'm not saying that's the only criteria why some students left, but it just so happens that Kododi and Dan Sodi said some things about Doe not making the right choice, that Doe didn't make the right choice by leading everybody to lay down their lives. And they just so happened to have left their vehicles. Now, maybe Cody was in that condition as well. Maybe some... no, I don't... Flexodi wasn't in that condition, I don't think. But her vehicle was so old, In the 90s, her vehicle was 80 years old. So she would be 130 now. So I don't think that's the case. I think Mark and Sarah verified to me, Mark verified to me that That Flex already left her vehicle. She's done some documentaries holding up the book that was done by the New York Post. I have it here. That there's nothing positive about this except for that it's the facts, you know. But it's also let me see if we're still operating here. It's going to take, how long is it going to take for you to get the image? Or maybe I don't have that on. No, I do have it on. Then you could probably read it the best that way. Anyway, one thing good about this book is there's some images in here of the Heaven's Gate. I think they're all black and white. They didn't probably want to put any money into it. These pictures were full of color. Of Alodi's pictures that he drew of, you know, the Earth Lab, and that's where I got the pictures from. But I think there's another publication that would publish these as well that were in color, because I think that's where I got the color ones. Okay, it says I'm still ticking away, and my volume is still on. I'm checking it more often, Jeff. Oh, how about the chat room? Botch job changed his mind. Yeah, you want to call it a botch job, you can call it a botch job, but it's I don't look at it as negative, because I think that T didn't want me to go through with it, and so that was, I think, a way that maybe Livodi overlooked doing something to the best of her ability. And because Cerrone was fixed right away, he didn't suffer very long. And his suffering wasn't, wasn't tremendously terrible. And he was, when I took him to the hospital. January, Livodi and I decided what to do. So we told Doe that we were going to take care of it. And what he said before he went to his quarters was, bring in Lagodi and Junodi. Tell them what's going on. And so the three of us got in touch with them. So they came and they stayed with Doe in the craft so that they could relay things that when we would call back, they would be there to, relay communications if Doe didn't want to, get on the phone and stuff. But, because he would want to get reports of things. Anyway, so then we drove off and we went south, and we went, we might have went over the border into California. That's kind of the way I remembered it. And then and we decided to try to call a priest to see if he had any experience with somebody that had a castration or had castrated themselves. Because we knew this was frowned upon. And we knew that Doe, if they found out that he had allowed this, were going to automatically jump to conclusions that it was against his will somehow, and this was a terrible, big scandal, and so we knew to keep the security tight. We didn't want to just go willy-nilly, If there was a way to fix this, like with a private doctor or something, that the priest knew about, that wasn't going to go to the press with it, because T and Doe had been big in the press before that, way back in the 75 and 6. But that press continued, for article upon article in Psychology Today and other periodicals over the years. I know it did dwindle off quite a bit, but then when the network started of the parents, then there was Cult Awareness Network that was, trying to keep track of us, which they would get little indications of where we were from dropouts. That Nancy Brown would sometimes find out about through the parents that the dropouts returned in communication with. And we knew there were investigators looking for us because Junodi found out that her brother was a policeman and he had hired an investigator to find us. And that he was right behind our trail a time or two when we moved out of town. And then he got to town right after we moved out of town. In Dallas, actually. We found out when Junodi did a visit. When we all did visits. And I actually went to Junodi's vehicle's house and met Junodi's vehicle's mother. Because this was the second visit. Doe wanted to show them that what their classmates were like. That we weren't, that they weren't the only one, that was of sound mind. Even though the world was depicting us as naive or gullible or stupid or whatever it is, they were thinking. Or brainwashed when we were trying to wash our brains. But you're not allowed to become a robot, even though the best thing that we can be is to be a perfect servant for our older members. That's what Jesus demonstrated as well. That's all he wanted to do, was do the will of his older member. That's another example of how the teachings of, which I'm going to move on to that. That's in the next video statement that is made. I'm going to move on to that. Okay, so to move on to that, since I don't know if there's any other questions in here. Oh, there is, okay. Well, anyway, I didn't finish the story, so ended up, Livody and Janody and I decided that I would just take him to the hospital in a car. Okay, and they had another car at that point. I'm not sure. Yeah, I think that they did that. Because then they came to the hospital sometime later to see how things were going. They wanted a report from me. And I took Cerrone into the hospital, and they right away took him in and took him to the emergency room, and wasn't but 15 minutes maybe where they came out and said, he's fine, and and he's sleeping, I think is what they said. And so I went out and I told Livodi and January were in the parking lot because we didn't want too many faces to be there, you know, to look like it was a whole group, you know, of people, like, you know, with female vehicles that were short-haired and all that. So that's what we chose to do. And because the priest didn't have anything to tell us. I talked to him on the phone. And he didn't know. He said, no, I don't know anybody that has ever done that. And so then I left the hospital. I went to the parking lot and I briefed Livodi and January on what I knew, and that he was okay and all that. And that it was he might be really. They wanted to keep him overnight, so I went back in and I told them I was going to be leaving and coming back tomorrow, and then I came out and Livodi and Jan already drove me back. Oh no, I guess I drove back. I guess I followed them or something. I don't know, to the motel we were staying at. And spent the night there, and then the next morning went back to the hospital, and I think we didn't want to be seen in the parking lot as being together too. And so they came with a different car, and so I went in there and went into the hospital, and the hospital staff, whoever greeted me, said that, oh, he's happy as a lark. And he says all the people are, you know, the people that are attending to him were really having a riot with him. He was the old Sorority. Sorority was very bubbly personality. And quick thinker. And, you know, 100% in recognition of and in behavior and ways of his older member. And so then we left together. We went back to the craft, and we first talked to Doe, and Doe gave us instructions to not tell anybody else in the craft about it. So it was just for some months, actually, even until I think I don't know if it was public, but some of the members of the craft were picking up on it because they knew we were gone. They knew things were happening. They knew, you know, January that, you know, Logodi and Junodi were called to the craft after Sorority and Soyoti were called to this craft, and you know, so I don't know if anybody said anything to them about it, but we had procedure that it wasn't our business if we weren't involved in it. And so Doe just had instructions to not do that, and I don't know why. Maybe it was to put me to the test and put Sorority to the test. But Sorority was like, you know, his hair was diminishing from his arms, and his voice got a little higher pretty quickly. I don't mean days or weeks necessarily. But it was certainly before we went public in 1994 that members of the craft were wondering about him. He seemed more bubbly than usual, too. Giddy. That was the word used, I think. And so Doe might have, you know, told everybody at that point, some point there, but it wasn't long after that, you know, that I went. Well, I remember thinking that, you know, why wasn't I allowed to do it? And I was like depressed about that. So that was a test too. it wasn't hard to keep my mouth shut. But I was partners with sorority during that time. So because I could communicate with him about it. If he wanted to tell me something about it, or I don't know. I guess it just made sense that this way I wouldn't be hiding something. I mean, I'm not justifying it, but I can see in my head that one of the benefits of me being partners with him is because, that I wouldn't, influences wouldn't necessarily hammer on me to, maybe, I don't know. I shouldn't make anything up there. Just, trying to have second guessing that kind of thing is worthless. And that's off track. So I should learn to stop doing that. Except where I can clearly see a potential value to somebody else, maybe. I don't know. Distant value. Circumstantial kind of value to sometimes doing that. But the story Doe told about being ambushed in a hotel room by a helicopter was crazy. Yeah, it's after they left the hotel room, right? Was kind of crazy, right? Yeah. And I learned things when he said that in the audio tape of 1994. I forget which town it was in, Denver or Portland or Inverness, California. I learned some things about that he hadn't said when he told us about that story a number of times, and when he told that story I think in the Beyond Human tapes, and when he told that story in the 88 update a little bit. And so, you got a little more information each time. That's like evident, and you didn't get any contrary information either. Which is like evidence, like 3 times. He also said that in person to us. He told us about that story. Maybe on 2 occasions they told us story. T and Doe present. So I got T as a witness to my witnessing him telling the story about how they met and all that. The arrest and all that was in that story that he told to us in person. So that's how many times, I know that there's nothing inaccurate about anything that he said about it. Not that there aren't more details to it, potentially. Because he didn't say everything about his life before the classroom. Before waking up with T in 1972 when that began. Around March or April. No, 6 months before they left Houston. What was that? March, July, August, September. No, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. Was it 6 months? All right. Did I get that wrong? I got to go back to my timeline. I've got a timeline that I keep on my blog, sawyerhg.wordpress.com. If anybody wants to look at it, just go to my blog and search on timeline, and you'll see what I put together on a lot of things. And I know it's not complete. I know there's more I could do with it to make it more accurate, but it's just the best I could do at the time, which I ended up putting that in the book. Well, no, I put a link to it in the book. I put a link to almost all the documents that were written that I posted on my blog that were in the Heaven's Gate book. I put links to those on my blog in my book. Okay, so see there's been a lot of comments. Yes, he was elated. Okay, so yeah, he flipped a coin and lost. So I think Riccodi went first. No, Surrody, not Riccodi. Surrody, Srrody. He was kind of the thin red-headed vehicle. Short red hair. It's kind of hard to tell, I guess, that his hair was red. But he talked about, in the exit videos, he talked about Pastor Murray and another pastor that Doe had taken an interest in for a little while. So that's how you can identify it, who I'm talking about. Anyway, but yeah, he had whoever won the coin toss had the choice of going first or not, and he chose to go first. He won the coin toss. But then Doe reconsidered after I left, and then gave permission for people that wanted to do that procedure to do it, but they had to go to a different town, get a job, and live someplace else other than the main craft, and earn the money from a job to pay for it. This way, the authorities, couldn't use that against him if he was going to be around long enough to where they would want to drum up something against him. You never knew what could happen. Doe was always, very thoughtful about everything. And he was always like talking to T about everything, because that was part of the way that younger members work with older members. They're not thoughtful by themselves. They're thoughtful, but thinking about what T would think about that, and wanting to be on the track that T would have him on, to take the actions, to give the instructions that T would have him give. He's very careful about that, always. And if he didn't feel like T was close to him, he was very upset, which happened when we went to Atlanta. And then we moved back, and he was feeling close to T again. Back to Colorado. Anyway, so Jeff then says, I'm going to skip your L. Chasai says, sup, my niggas. Now, the only reason I can say that is because my daughter, who's a white girl, she loves the hip-hop, and she's had black friends that didn't have a problem with her singing those lyrics and stuff, because they're not taking it so seriously. So I'm not taking that seriously. I'm taking it like, we're all real people, even though we've been trounced upon by the powers that be. I get that all the time. I get, people think I'm a lunatic and I'm dangerous, and how many people that are in black American vehicles are seen by whites as dangerous just by standing someplace, so they're surprised by them, and all of a sudden it's like, oh man, I gotta get away from you. I know that vibration, I know that programming, and I know that it's completely driven by very nasty discarnates and a Luciferian space alien, potentially, who love to keep people, well, I don't know exactly how that works. But let's say a Luciferian space alien fallen angel soul hadn't overcome their racial consciousness, or their gender consciousness, or whatever it was. Because you can't you can't be racially conscious as thinking of somebody and responding to them based on their race is being racist. And wanting people to recognize somebody as the race that they are is also being racist. Because human vehicles, going to the next level, it doesn't matter what race you are to the next level. They have vehicles that are all different kinds of colors. So, but that's human behavior. That's mammalian behavior. That's animal behavior. That's a carryover, of one species thinking they're better than another. Because, even leopards, or, you can imagine that, some of them think they're better because they have more spots or smaller spots, or I don't know what it would be, but by outward appearance can be sometimes the judgment, I imagine. Like birds, like peacocks, I imagine some of them think that they say that's a mating call for the peacocks to put out their feathers. So if males are in competition with one another, then if there's another one looking for that female, they're going to put out their feathers. So that female is going to judge that, that male by how impressed they are by their presentation and their colors and their everything, right? The sounds they make at the same time. So it's from the animal kingdom that we get those kind of things. The next level only cares about our souls. And our souls have some next level mind in them. But not necessarily a lot. And so the task is to get more next level mind in and get rid of the human mind. That's the misinformation mind, and that's the racial consciousness is part of that. Now, I'm not putting down people that are protesting and want to stand up. That's that's not my business. I'm not in the department of judging that. That's the best thing that somebody can do for their own growth. Because some people are, there's other things that they've got to focus on overcoming. And that might help them to be in those protests, standing up for the black people that were murdered by police. But the way Doe talked about that was in terms of sexuality as well and gender consciousness as well. As if you don't want somebody to identify you by your gender or your sexuality or your race, then you wouldn't want to bring that to their attention, that you are that gender or sexual inclination or attraction or racial identity. Because you're drawing attention to your race by being racial, basing that on things. Now, I already said this, but I mean, if you're using that as an example, using that as an example is not I don't think it's a bad thing, because you potentially can help somebody, like a white person or another racial person, that has a lot more to go in understanding that, in a sense, somebody that is in a black vehicle in the United States and maybe other countries in Europe and Russia and places, or depends on how dark your skin is, right? You can be in Africa and you could be in a black vehicle, but it's not black enough for somebody, or it's too black for somebody. That's, I think, the way it goes. And yet the people that are lighter skinned may be from cross pollinating with people of lighter skin. Anyway, I'm not, that can even be through thousands of years in history, even a previous civilization. But someone can feel like they've got to make an issue of this in order to wake people up. They might even not think of it that way, but the next level might, know. So, what's point of overcoming they need to experience? They may come back in a future life, or even graduate into the next level and still have to overcome things that they were working on. And that can apply to people now. There's people now that maybe have overcome a lot of things that I haven't and other people haven't. That, the next level would see as you're doing the best you can, and I'm going to, bring you on the craft and give you a next level vehicle to wear. But you'll have to probably come back to be with an older member in person when you make the choice to graduate. You could have been somebody that was with an older member in person 2,000 years ago or 4,000 years ago, or even from a different culture. Because we don't know when the souls were saved from. What Tiendo said that is that any soul that had a significant relationship with next level older member in the past was coming back at this time. And this time is continuing now. As long as we have the direct evidence of what Tiendo said and did tied to their vehicles and the vehicle's history, the gate's open. And the path to that gate is the same path that Jesus gave, the same path that Tiendo gave while they were in their vehicles, and the same and that Do gave in the second time, and that was given now through Junodi's writings of Stand Up for Tiendo as being from the kingdom that created the earth and all its occupants, scientifically. And maintain that stand as part of it, despite the consequences. And the consequence until we depart, until we exit. Now, that might go back and forth for people, okay? You might stand for them and then get distracted with something. But, standing for them, it's up to us how much to stand for them and in what ways. And we can ask the next level, we can ask Tiendo in our privacy for help on how you can best stand for them. And including with standing for them is to the degree that you want to adopt the major offense list, behaviors and ways, and the lesser offense list, behaviors and ways. But if you can't accomplish those, I shouldn't say can't, because can't is not in a dictionary in Tiendo's classroom, which we're experiencing now to some degree, the post classroom, to where we're not all together in the same place and we don't have an older member. So it wouldn't work to have that kind of that classroom can't exist unless there's an older member here, and he's not coming back during this civilization. So, but we can ask them how to apply things, and I forgot where I was going. I'm getting tired. And I don't want to go back to that anymore. I want to go back to the chat room and then go back to the video before I close. in the podcast, you said he was elated after he got out of the hospital. Yes, right. And then Deport says, Jeff said that. And then Deport says, did you guys refer to him as being hurt? Or was it referred to as something wrong with the vehicle? Oh, no, we wouldn't have talked in next level language to the people in the, I didn't have to do that. I just said what, I think what I said was, I might have told a little fib. I think what I said is, I didn't want to implement myself in doing something illegal. So I think what I said is I became aware that my friend did this to himself. And wanted help. And so that's why I'm here. That's what I believe I told them. Because I had to fill out a form, where I put false information. Because I didn't want them to have any ability to trace me back to, with my vehicle's name, or my vehicle's real name, or, where our craft was, or anything like that. So to me, that was a time that it was fully correct to agree with your adversary. Find agreement with your adversary. In other words, do something that might not be totally true, but then your adversary won't find fault with you because of. That's what Jesus said about agree with your adversary when you're in the way with them. Otherwise, you'll be before the judge, and then you might be thrown into jail. Because the Luciferians would look for any opportunity to try to disrupt the classroom. Now, the next level might not allow that to happen, which I think would be the case. IT and our spacecraft at the time knew this was going on. I don't have any doubt about that. And her crew. And so they could have kept people from, even having any thoughts about it, even in response to me. Being, what do you mean? He told you? How did he tell you, What did he say exactly? How did he do this procedure by himself? They could have asked those questions, but they didn't. They just released them from the hospital, and they all were. Well, I shouldn't say all. The way they said it is a number of people. They gave the impression directly that a number of people, loved chatting with him. Sorority had an out-of-craft task for years, so he knew very well how to interface with people that weren't in the classroom. Because in the out-of-craft tasks we had, the jobs in the world, whether it was cooking or programming or technical support or whatever it was, our instructions weren't to tell them anything about the next level, so we wouldn't have used next level terminology ever. We didn't want to stand out as being different from the rest of the humans. Now, when I say humans, I am a human. I mean, I've got a human vehicle, and all of them were also human vehicles, but those vehicles were changing, so they weren't human vehicles anymore. Entirely. I mean, they were human vehicles the whole time they were there. Okay. I mean, incarnate, you're a human vehicle. But you have a next level mind vehicle actually growing within that human vehicle. It's a soul, it's a plasma kind of consistency, and it's bigger than the vehicle is. That's why I think they were depicting Jesus to have a halo. Because maybe they were allowed to see it. The next level can regulate that. Okay, so vehicles can have their frames cracked. Yep. All right. So then, or tailpipes fall off. Yeah, that's right. No, I mean my nuka. Okay, so you don't want to say that N word. I wouldn't use that N word with somebody in a black American, African American vehicle in person, and even here, because of how offensive it is to so many people. You know, even if it is in jest, and you know people that you don't have a, even if you don't have a racial bias. I don't know what kind of vehicle you're in. It might be an X level, an African American vehicle. So L Chazai says JABRNNYY. Jabrani. I don't know what that means. Okay, Duport says, I got you, bro. Thank you. Deport says, that story, though, told about being ambushed in a hotel was crazy. Helicopter story, I already talked about that a little bit. El Chasel says, those name was Marshall Applebaum or something like that. No, Applewhite. Like that, right? He was a sort of closeted trans. No, he was, I don't know if he was in the closet, but he was living with a man and you know, had a relationship with him. And what he didn't like about the relationships he had was he wanted somebody to be exclusively together with. So I'm sure they were sexual. Yeah, he was sexual, I'm sure. But no, he was not trans. And he might have still been attracted to female vehicles, but I don't think so. But even if he was, by the time he became Doe, he was blocking those thoughts. So, you know, even well before that, when he became Bo, Bo and Peep, he had been blocking. Even a year before, he said he was separating from the world in various ways. I don't know to what degree. Before he hooked up with T, he had been a high school music teacher. Or, you know, he was a college music teacher. I don't know if he was a high school music teacher in, I think it was Alabama, years before that, before he met T in 1972. I think that was a high school. It might have been a private, like a Christian kind of high school. And the university was a Christian, it was called the University of St. Thomas in Houston, where he was the choral director and the professor of music. And he also gave voice lessons on the side, and he was sang for the Houston Opera. And so he mingled with the you know, the upper class, so to speak. Right, Jeff said Applewhite, and Deport says quality of life has improved, yes, but overall I don't think societies and world have gotten better since the beginning of mankind. Some could argue that iniquity has only gotten worse. I wouldn't doubt that it got worse. Yeah, I mean, there's no, I know what you're saying. El Chazal says, our species is still young. Many things are yet to come in our story. Well, see, I don't think of the species as, in the way Tian-Do were teaching, the species of human has been around many times. And the equivalent of human has been around many times. The space aliens are human equivalents. And so there's human equivalents on different planets. And there's individuals that are humanoid, just like humans, but they don't have the negative force of the Luciferian space alien fallen angel souls to deal with. So they're not evil. They don't kill one another. They live peaceful together. And the next level can come and go from those planets and even be seen by those beings on those planets. Well, we can't see them here because the vibration here is so hideous that they don't want to be seen, even though they could protect themselves. But then again, maybe some of the spacecrafts that they have wouldn't be able to protect themselves against certain kinds of weapons if the humans knew that where they were exactly in their spacecrafts or with their physical vehicles. Because their physical vehicles can be killed, some of them. But then they just go to wardrobe right away and get another one, if that happens. And it could be a lesson if somebody gets in a circumstance to where they're doing a task on Earth, even among humans, and something happens and they didn't, exercise the best judgment, and so they were in harm's way in some way that damaged their vehicle. And humans wouldn't even know about it. Because even the denser vehicles that they grow on a vine, they don't have reproduction like human mammals have it, because they're not mammals anymore. Even them, they can geez, sometimes I just lose it. I'm not like, hooked up to a channel or anything. So if I lose it, it's either because I'm too tired, which is many times the case. But I definitely have to get far along in this video. So maybe I said enough about that. Yeah, the only future to the human race is by becoming a member of the next level. Otherwise, we're all stuck being human. Now, that doesn't mean that they won't start a new civilization and that many of the people, the souls and the spirits, are brought back to seed and be given the opportunity to take over new human vehicles in order to go through continued lessons, and it can be different than the way this one turned out. Okay, but we're going to still be put to the same challenges, one way or another. So they would have, well, according to Do, there would be a new crop of Luciferian space aliens when they dissolve the present crop. So then they get to be in eternal damnation, would be being dissolved into some other kind of energy form. I don't know if they end up maintaining a certain amount of recognition that they that, is kind of like a tormenting kind of vibration. But at that point, it would be like a program that was, just in an endless loop. And what would be the value of letting that happen? It would be potentially that that there were things worse than death, like being in an endless loop of knowing that you could have taken one of the many opportunities that you had to grow towards next level membership. That's the only choice we have as humans, is to grow towards next. That's the only future. I mean, we can potentially grow in a future to where, theoretically, they do have places to live on Mars, and they have regular excursions over there, where people live, and raise families, and who knows what, right? That potential exists. Though it said that was potential for a civilization. So, but if you count that as being more evolved, you're missing. I think you're missing the point that T and Do were trying to describe, that you're not becoming non-mammalian anymore. And you have a limited lifespan, even if you're able to extend that lifespan for a long time through genetic engineering or through biomedical interventions, or from growing organs, or from theoretically, the Luciferians are doing that, not theoretically, but in an abstract way, when they abduct humans onto their spacecrafts, and they take the sperms and the egg and they put them together, or they use a human equivalent vehicle that still has the ability to produce eggs or sperm to interface with human sperms and egg from somebody that's not on their craft on a regular basis. When they're doing that, they're producing vehicles that have to start as babies. And then they can be trained, just like human families train their offspring, to be members of that community. And they think that's natural for them. So, and people can think that because they can, appear and disappear in some ways, or put cloud cover around their spacecrafts, or really go faster than humans can go, that they're more evolved. Well, they're not more evolved. They just have better technology than humans have at that moment. But humans might have that equivalent technology too, if the next level allows them to have certain elements, like the Bob Lazar element, in my opinion. Because Do didn't talk about that. And Do didn't use those analogies that I just used. But I think those analogies are within the teachings. But I'm not going to try to pick that apart again, because I do want to move on. There's only, Truth in the World says, there's only growth or death here. Well, I skipped something that Deport said, I can't predict what will happen. The future, we could all be wiped out before too long. Yeah, it's possible. It's possible, 100%. Deport, TGV, looks like you may have skipped over some of El Chazia's comments. I don't agree with most of them, but they are worthy of discussing. I read the one about the quality. Let me go back. Our societies and world gets better because people make it better. But how is the society and world better now? I mean, that's true to some degree, because the lessons are to make it better. Okay, I mean, actually the lessons are to get into the humanism and then to get out of the humanism when you see how it doesn't work. And when it doesn't please you, when it doesn't satisfy you. Or if you're satisfied by things in the human kingdom, then that's something to still overcome, whatever that is that satisfies you. And I'm not saying that, you have a nice meal and you're satisfied by it, that you have to overcome eating. No. T said specifically that food isn't an addiction. But sexuality, that's the case. If we're really satisfied by our sexuality, then we're going to have to overcome that in the future, according to T and Do's teachings. Or not. We have the choice. We can stay in the same grade of school, or we can even go backwards and get even deeper into sexuality, as an example. Same thing with being a world leader, or being an artist, or being a homemaker, whatever you do. If you're doing it the best you can, and you're pleased with what you're doing, then you're not growing necessarily. And that's why the next level makes it harder and harder to avoid not growing. Avoid growing by taking things away. And we have things taken away by the fact that our vehicles expire, they die. They have accidents, they die. They get maimed. They have diseases. They get sick. They get in wars. They get in fights. They have disagreements. They have mental, people abuse each other and have mental anguish. And, people don't have responsibility for their children. And so they make it harder on the parent that does want to take responsibility, or harder on the child. But then the child can actually grow from that experience and also not become, like someone that becomes suicidal or something, or even, whatever, to try to, get back at their parents, even whether their parents biological or not, So, everybody gets lessons, even at the youngest age, they're having lessons. And making positives out of negatives is the way to overcome those characteristics from doing a sin. So, like Doe said, being humanitarian is about the best behavior that you can have, which Jesus taught that as well. The greatest love that you could have for somebody else is to lay down your life for them. Nobody disagrees, I don't think, that when an EMS person or a firefighter rushes into a burning building to save somebody, that they're doing about the most loving thing they could do with their life, to save somebody else's life by even being threatened themselves. People could say that about the military, and there's a degree of that potentially. I can't say for sure, but depending on the person, I'm just not the judge of people, so that's why I can't say for sure. Because all things can be forgiven of the next level and also grown from. And Jesus said that. Except for blasphemy against the holy mind that comes from the next level. The truth, the reality of the next level's existence, and what it takes to become a member. It's not just believing. Believing doesn't get you that far. It's the most difficult thing a human can do. Now, I didn't know that while I was in the classroom, but I recognize it now. So, I mean, one of the ways that things get better through people is, according to Tiendo, is like the way that the next level stimulated the women's suffrage movement, and the thinking positively about eunuchs, somebody who castrated themselves. When humans were castrating humans, and humans were born castrated, and by men, castrated by men. So different types of castration, but the one kind of castration that was an ultimate positive was when an individual does that for the kingdom of heaven's sake. Now, the Luciferian-controlled world thinks that's abominable to think about doing that, because they want to worship their sexuality, and they want to worship the family of the human. So, but the equal rights also for the African American vehicles is also started in the mid 1800s, and there are also some big UFO flaps in the beginning and the mid and the late 1800s, more than ever before recorded. And they were recording things by word of mouth, and putting them in the newspapers and stuff. And that they had newspapers in the 1700s. So it's not just a matter of, well, I don't know when the printing press was invented, but I mean, they had newspapers, even in terms of papyrus, that people were writing on, and then making manuscripts and duplicating things. They would spend hours and hours. There were a lot of people doing that kind of thing. To write books, to write things. So, anyway, I got off a little track there, but injustice can be overcome. Well, not in the human kingdom, because the next level provides the stimulators of injustice with the Luciferian space alien fallen angel souls, because they want it to be hard. They don't want the human kingdom to work. They don't want the human kingdom to be a final destination, or the souls won't evolve into next level, which is a final destination. Because the next level is real. They're like a Star Trek crew, and they drive dense physical spacecrafts. The spacecrafts can even be grown on a vine to spacecraft size of any size. I can't imagine what the size limits would be. Could be a planet, even, I guess, potentially. Planet size. I'm not saying that the Earth is one of those spacecrafts. I don't think it is. From Tiendo's mind, they would have, if they knew that, they would have probably told us that. They didn't just make things up. I saw that over 19 years. They didn't spend a lot of time on philosophy or talking about how it is in the next level. Their whole effort was to help us take control of our vehicles, our horses. Anyway, I'm going to move on. Maybe I got enough. It's looking at life holistically and having perspective. Yes, I don't disagree with you, but there's more to it from Tiendo's mind. That's all. Thanks for telling me about that. I missed a bunch. Wow, I missed a lot. Wow. Wow. Okay, his vehicle was attracted to males, yes. What of it? Right. His vehicle was attracted to males, that's right. Then what of it? Helps me understand people to see where they start their journeys from and how they see the trip. Then Deport says, gay or straight, everybody has to overcome their sexuality. Well, they don't have to, though, Deport. Maybe you didn't mean it that way. But it's all optional. But to get to the next level, they don't have any sexuality in the next level. It's not a moral thing. They don't have the plumbing for it. They don't have reproductive organs. Because they grow a vehicle to adulthood. So it'd be like, you being who you are now, coming out of the womb that way. That's stupid analogy, but I think you know what I'm talking about. So then L. Chazel says, what of it? It helps me to understand people. Oh, okay, you got that. Gay or straight. I don't think. S. Chazel says, I don't know. I think some people embrace their sexuality. Well, yes, some do. But not students into the next level. Oh, they might for a period of time. But as soon as they find out about Tiando's teachings, if they continue to embrace their sexuality, they might participate in it without embracing it. Kind of like being addicted to a certain amount, and and not wanting it to grow anymore. So doing things to stop it from growing any further, not wanting to have any relationships with anybody, that kind of thing. So anyway, so there's the degrees of embracing it. Why do we need to overcome it? Like I already answered that question, because if you're still here, because the next level doesn't want us. They don't need us on their spacecrafts, in their environment that has vehicles that don't have that behavior and ways. And so we need to overcome it, and also to build our minds strong enough. It takes a lot of strength of mind to overcome it. And that's the kind of strength that we need in order to operate a next level vehicle that doesn't operate on its own. It doesn't like human vehicles operate without a soul. They can operate with the spirit. The spirit is just generated from the experiences and the mind. The things that we accept and reject, and we think about, we don't think about, and the things that we do and we don't do. That's what becomes us. That's all we are. We are the decider of what influences, what discarnates to thoughts to let into our heads and keep in our heads. So we can have negative thoughts about something, but if we don't act them out and continue them in our heads, then we're not responsible for them. We're not responsible for the bad thoughts that we have. We're responsible for allowing those bad thoughts to continue to linger in our heads. And the sooner we can get rid of them, the better. So if you have a thought that you feel like you is a bad thought, hurting somebody or something like that, then treat it like obliterate it with whatever with your mind, strength of your mind, and send it packing, and then put your mind on something else. Put up a blank card, the blank cue card. So there's no thought in place of it, or put a thought in place of it. Like name it is one of the things that Tiendo taught early on. So you would say thought of violence against somebody. Get away from me, Satan. Get away from me, influence. Get out of here. You don't have to be, you don't have to be down on your vehicle for it. Your own vehicle. You don't have to be depressed. You're thinking whether it's exactly true or not doesn't matter. Tiendo taught. It works to label it as an influence, as if somebody was standing next to you saying, why don't you sock that person? Why don't you pull that person's ponytail? I'm not saying that's an example of something that's a terrible thing to do. It's not a good thing to do, I don't think. But there's different kinds of offenses. That's why Tiendo talked about there were lesser offenses and there was more major offenses. But somebody that pulls somebody's ponytail, like a girl's ponytail, and sitting behind them, to annoy them or to hurt them, if they keep on getting away with it, they might escalate into doing it worse than that if they don't get the attention they want from it. And then they could get attention from it that can be a lesson, and they realize that they hurt that person and they don't want to do that again. And so then they block out any thoughts of doing that. So that's the way humans grow, by being subject to the negatives. If there was no negative force, there would be no impetus to grow. Well, there would be impetus to grow, but it would come through different ways. And there can be gardens, planets that have life forms growing on them equivalent to us that are growing in different ways, according to Tiendo. Why do we need to advance from being a mere human? We need our human vehicles. So it's a blessing to be alive in a human vehicle. And they're capable of becoming members of the next level. So I wouldn't put down humans. I know Tiendo didn't use the term. I'm picking on you a little bit, Deport, but that's what I feel like I just got to go with it. Not that I'm not guilty of saying some of the same kind of things. But humans are beautiful creatures, but it's not the end of beauty. And it doesn't mean that they keep on emanating beautiful creatures. Beautiful in the way that they can make choices by pulling on the right thing to do. The peaceful way of living, the desire to help others, because that's what humanitarianism is. That's what Jesus was teaching. Do to others as you'd have them do to you. Give to somebody who asks something from you. And if you've got two coats, and somebody asks you for one, give it to them. You don't have to have two coats. You can trust that if something happens to your coat, somebody else might give you a coat, because you're following the teachings of the next level by doing that, which we wouldn't have known that until Jesus came to tell us that. Then Sally, I'm sorry I don't pronounce your name right, El Chazel, or El Chazi, Chaz A, I don't know. as we age, we hopefully gain wisdom and perspective and help others to become whole as well, to shed hatred and ignorance and anger and embrace love and cooperation and respect. Yes, those are all positive things, but when it's graduation time, we have the choice to overcome even putting our energy into that and putting our energy into what's coming from the level that's off the mountain. So what you were describing was getting to the top of the human kingdom mountain, where that's the way we act towards one another, and we learn from that and hopefully gain wisdom and perspective, like you said. But to get off the mountain, we have to appeal to people that have already grown beyond human, evolutionarily. Just like there's evolutionarily the mineral kingdom, and then there's the plant kingdom, and then there's the animal kingdom, and then there's the human kingdom. That's not the end of evolution. I'm not talking about automatic evolution versus choice to evolve. So that's what humans have that animals don't have. Animals can't choose to become human. Well, to some degree, they may be able to by being taken by, but they have to be instigated by the humans to become their masters, and then to be taken into their household, and then to want to be just like them, and wanting to serve them, and wanting to please them, and that being the only thing that's on their minds. So if you open the door, they might not want to even run out the door to go run with the pack, if there was a pack out there. That's a dog that's moving into the human condition with their spirit, to where it's a potential that one of the ways of moving into the human condition is by becoming an influence on a baby that's in that human family that they became attached to. So that baby then might come alive with just, really happy with the dog that's around them all the time, and really pleased to be there. And so the baby forms a bond with the dog, with the animal. I'm not saying it's just a dog, but the example T&O used was dogs and horses. And so am I still going? It doesn't look like I'm going anymore. I'm still ticking away. Okay. Just went off the screen because of I minimized my screen, and so it went away, showing that I'm still going, and that my volume is still on. But compared to like what Deeport is saying there is that compared to next level members, humans are not significant unless they're growing. Then we're just like it was compared, that we were like the way that's compared in the record books, as humans are compared to the grass of the earth. And like to leaves on the tree. T&O used that. Talked about that analogy was used before in the records, to where, each human vehicle is like a leaf on the tree. When that leaf falls off the tree, dead, that doesn't mean that all the experiences that leaf had are gone. Because because they're in constant communication with the whole trunk, which is like the human tree. So it's a mind consciousness that survives the death of the vehicles. That's the spirit of the planet, if you want to look at it that way. But the planet isn't. Well, I guess it is serving as a container for the mind, all the mind. If you want to look at it that way, I guess. Tiendo didn't talk about it that way, so maybe they wouldn't use that, relate to that analogy. But I don't think they're finding fault with it either. I may be wrong about that. Then El Chazal says, advance from being a human, ? How about learn to be a whole person? Well, see, we can't be a whole person while we're a human, because a human isn't a whole person. Latino taught that there are no individuals in the human kingdom, because we don't know it, but we're actually, we're like timeshare computer systems, to where our inputs are our mind and our senses, are our input devices like the mouse and the keyboard. And that the dead humans are all like keyboard or typing things on our keyboard. And so we see different ideas in our heads, okay? And then we write them down sometimes, and then we share them with other people. And so indirectly or directly, we're getting all that from the spirit world in combination with new ideas that the next level seeded the planet with. In other words, provided the new ideas to a degree so that humans could pull on those ideas and put them into, because thoughts also have their existence. It's a frequency object. Just like in computers you have frequency objects, they're called packets. And they ride, remotely. You can transfer billions and billions of bytes, bits and bytes a second. Or maybe millions. I don't know if they're in the billions now. But, so the next level designed that. They designed that for humans to be able to draw in. So, well, if you're like somebody that's trying to, come up with a better way of doing something, of tabulating numbers, okay? And so, you make what was called the abaxis or abraxas, whatever it was. Okay, but then you more time passes and they get electricity and so they're playing with it. They're wanting to do everything they can with it, and so they come up with a little calculator where you push a button and you see it on the screen, because it's got a little chip in there or whatever was introductory to that. I'm not. I know the first computers were these huge things that filled up a room. Univacs. But, so in that way, we're evolving in that way, but that's not a true evolution. That's just an evolving of technology. Because the next level doesn't need the human technology for anything. The next level has technology that grows on a vine, They have technology that doesn't die. Can be a vehicle that we occupy that doesn't die, that can turn invisible to somebody else, that can levitate, I guess fly. But they don't necessarily do that because they have spacecrafts. But the spacecraft itself can be a person. It can be driven by a pilot soul, according to Tiendo. That's the purpose to being here. The purpose wasn't to stay human. The ultimate purpose, I'm saying. There's a lot of purposes on up the ladder to becoming the best human you can be. And then from then, so one of the paths to being the best human you can be would be humanitarian. Okay, environmentalist might be a path to the best human you can be. Scientist might be the best path. Artist might be the best path to becoming the best human you can be. Or combinations of those. And other things, family maker, religionist, firefighter, whatever it is, it's, being of service to the government can be a path to the top of the mountain. Well, I'm not saying, the top of the mountain as being like this one little spot on the mountain, because we're talking about the human kingdom mountain, the tree of humanness, biologically but overall spiritually, of the mind, of the thinking, of the behavior and the ways that is a result of the thinking, fluffing off the animal behaviors and ways. Like Tiendo said, that people that were gay were showing evidence that they had overcome their gender consciousness because they were attracted more to the same sex, the same gender as they. And the next level, the reason why that's overcoming is because in the next level they don't have gender. They don't even have plumbing. They don't have anything that identifies them as somebody that can give birth to somebody else, or somebody that can seed somebody that can give birth to somebody else. Because they give birth to new members that's a joy to do, but they don't need to do, by coming into human vehicles with their invisible soul bodies, taking them over and waking them up and preparing those vehicles ahead of time, by the way, through years in life, so that they, like an example of Do, so he experienced all the things that you could experience by being a human, pretty much. Relatively speaking. Like he was in the army, but he wasn't in combat. He was in the signal corps, with semaphore and Morse code. Okay, so he wasn't involved with shooting anybody. So he can relate to people that were in the army and say, yes, I was in the army. If one of the students had that to overcome, maybe they thought that was a terrible thing to even be a part of the army when the army was going around killing people. And they wanted to follow the law of you should not kill another human. A human shouldn't kill a human. That came originally from the next level as part of the lesson step. But that was like the toddler lesson step for evolution beyond the human kingdom. To not kill one another and not steal from one another and to respect your elders. Recognize that your elders might have some wisdom that you don't have. I'm not talking about elders in age of the vehicle. I'm talking about elders in experience. Because the greatest elder is the chief of chiefs. And we don't know. We're not capable of understanding where the chief of chiefs came from. So then El Chazal says, as we age, we hopefully gain wisdom and perspective and help others to become, I read that one already. this is also something to overcome. Yeah, when the older member's present, if you're referring to that, Biski, if you're referring to what L. Chazal just said, or you're going to say, or you refer, I don't know what you're referring to. Maybe I should read your next statement. While good to be a humanitarian, and while there is no rep incarnate, ultimately it does nothing for advancing beyond human. Then why did Doe give us three categories or types of people that could be saved for a future incarnation? Not everybody, but three types that were separating from the world if you can't grow when the rep's not here. With part of that growth being humanitarian. The way Doe said in the Beyond Human tape was the best behavior. But that didn't mean that joining a humanitarian organization that necessarily that, goes to different countries and builds homes for them is the ultimate thing to do to advance beyond human in the future. But that's the most advanced behavior of one to another, to treat each other the way we want to be treated. So that's a positive to do that. But that doesn't mean that that's the only thing you have to do to advance beyond human in the future. So to say that it does nothing for advancing beyond human, I don't think is accurate to T and Doe's teachings. Because you don't know when, you don't know, how are we to judge that? I mean, who gives us the right to judge that? Did Doe give us the right to judge that? Well, then show me what he said. Jesus certainly didn't give us the right to judge that. And Doe said that we could trust what Jesus taught in the four Gospels. Indeed, Bisky says, this world, as Doe said, is nothing more than a stepping stone, a realized hell to eventually leave behind. Yes, but it's like nothing more than a stepping stone? No, how about a beautiful opportunity to be a stepping stone? Let's put it on those terms. I don't want to trivialize the human kingdom. That's the way it sounds to me, the way you said that, when you said nothing more than. I'm sorry, I'm being a little sarcastic, but I get a little perturbed with some expressions. I'm not trying to fuss at you, but because I'm not your judge. I know that. So if I'm wrong about what I'm saying, I hope I learn it from things that T and Doe said. Then Deport says, that's like a caterpillar being content with being the best possible caterpillar and never advancing to become a human butterfly. Exactly. You want to stay with your caterpillar ways. And then L. Chazzy says, I don't know what that carrot means, D. Bisky. I call a carrot that arrow pointing up character. Well, that's fine. You feel that. I don't see it that way. This is the world we have. This is the life we are given. I see no evidence to suggest otherwise. We can have we can't have the kingdom of heaven. We can have the kingdom of heaven here now, not according to Doe. And it doesn't even make any sense, because what is the kingdom of heaven? Where is the kingdom of heaven? Where did Jesus say the kingdom of heaven was? He said it was in outer space. Heaven means elevated areas above the earth. So you're saying that the kingdom of heaven can be in the ethers? Are we going to all just be raptured and be just hanging, flying with playing harps? Is that the kingdom of heaven? That's not realistic. That was given to us as images to get us off track by the Luciferian space alien fallen angel souls. To think that we could have heaven on earth. You can't have heaven. The only degree that you can have heaven on earth, the tiny degree that you can, it's a huge degree, but it's hidden from everybody. Unless somebody's reaching for it. And that is by recognizing that older members came from that outer space location. That's beyond where the space aliens can go. Space aliens demonstrate human behavior and want human behavior. They want to repair the earth. The next level can repair the earth easily when they're ready to. They don't need the space aliens and the humans to try to do it. Not that they don't recognize the value to improving our environment. That is a positive. But that's not what the forces that control this planet, the surface of this planet, are doing. They're not improving the environment. They're making a wreck of the environment so that people are sick. And they don't even know they're sick. Sick in the head also. They can't even conceive of the next level's reality. And they can also think that just by being nice to each other, that we're going to have, that, somehow we're going to wake up on the, like a butterfly on the, in this everlasting life. We're going to get, why would somebody want to give somebody else everlasting life if all they're going to do is sit around and chew the cud? You got to work. Somebody has to work to, chew the cud meaning, just talk about how blissful everything is. Not focus on the negatives. There's a great advantage to positivity, okay, and not being around negativity. Yes, but it's not negative to identify that there is more to learn than what's in the record books. More to learn than what Jesus taught. Because Jesus knew he was speaking two languages, parables, story form, and and directly to a degree, according to the growth at that time for his students that were preparing for graduation. Not everybody was ready for graduation. So I'm not saying there's anything wrong with what you're thinking, El Chazel, but there is more to what you're saying. Now, I'm not your judge. But if you stay with T and Doe's information, you'll see what I'm saying. And if you're open to it. If you're not open to it, then you won't. Unless the next level decides to give you some smelling salts. And they do that. And then you get it from a different source at a different time. Especially if you ask. If you project your asking to your Heavenly Father, which is the way Jesus taught to pray, right? He didn't teach to pray to Jesus. He said, pray to your Heavenly Father in the heavens, in outer space, deep outer space, among the stars. He didn't have to say all those words, but that's what that meant. The firmament above the earth. Firmament means the planets. But not to the specific planets. I guess you could do that. if you want the truth about Tiendo, then ask your Heavenly Father with all sincerity that you can muster if Tiendo are the ones that brought the updates. Were they Jesus and his Father coming back? Were they the two witnesses? However you want to answer it, ask it. Is Sawyer telling the truth about these kind of things right now? I'm not saying I'm always telling the truth. I try to, but I don't assume that. Whatever you want to say to them, and then be open to what comes. If you're not open to what comes, like I guess like I said already, it's I'm not, I don't find fault with you for not being open. I'm certainly not open to a lot of things, and sometimes I have to be prodded to be open to certain things, and that's the path of growth. We're all in that position all the time, whether we like it or not. We always have choices. But if humans try to take choices away from humans, that's where humanity goes way downhill into hell. By drawing humans into that hell with them, by taking away their choices to come out of that hell. We can't become heavenly beings while we're on the earth. We can only become heavenly beings when we're in the heavens. That's what it means. It means that for a reason. Uranus in the Greek. Well, no, is that spirit? But that's the same kind of thing in a sense. Well, no, you could say that Luciferian space alien souls were once heavenly beings, but they're not anymore. And they demonstrate that by fostering all kinds of human behaviors on the planet, and seeing humans as collateral damage and all that. Teaching humans the opposite of the teachings of the next level, which is what they want to do. They want to keep people away from seeing Tiendo. So they will tell you anything. And they've told Christians this. A lot of Christians have been, believe the same way you're talking about, El Chazel, that heaven can be on earth. And in a sense, Jesus said that the meek shall inherit the earth. So who are the meek? The gentle, the kind. That's what meek means. Some of the keywords that it means. And so let's say the next level does want to continue the civilization for a while after the infrastructure is mostly gone, because the G7 and the G10 are disposed of. The leaders of all that are disposed of, the vehicles, as well as all those that were in league with them, because they're not going to be profitable for the next level. I mean, profitable is not the word for it, but they're not going to be programs. They're not going to be beings that can grow to become more by choosing to become more. And so they become recycled for new opportunity. They don't get to live forever. Why would they be made to live forever? They might live forever. They may be brought back to another civilization in order to provide that kind of thinking that they became. I'm not even going to say evolved, because some of it isn't an evolution, it's a devolution. Yeah, you make life perfect, Deport. Yeah, you can't make life perfect. No, you can't make life perfect, but you can get on board with those that are perfect by identifying them as being from the level of human that level above human that created the planet. And we do get proof of that, but it's not easy to get proof of it. And it takes some time, and it comes with experience. Now, I was given a big dose of it for no, it wasn't because I, necessarily deserved it. It was because my vehicle was going to provide what the overcoming needed to happen for a returning soul to take over this vehicle in order to graduate. And so the I that's speaking is the vehicle that has three parts to it. It has its genetic mind, it has its environmental mind from birth that it was experienced with society and everything, and then it has the next level mind that was given to it by the soul that came back in combination with T and Do's help to bring the memory of that soul to consciousness in the vehicle. That's why some things, what T and Do said, I believed in them automatically. Spirits, I had no problem at all believing that that was 100% accurate, that they were dead humans. UFOs, space aliens, I had no reason, no disbelief in that being possible before I joined T and Do. But I wasn't studying those things. I'd never been exposed to those things before, but I just knew they were made sense of being real. People from outer space, it made sense to me. Now that's because my vehicle was prepared for that. And that doesn't mean that because I was prepared for that and I know that I'm ahead of you or anybody else. Because you may have been prepared in other ways that I haven't overcome yet and that are easy for you to overcome. So there is no competition. And that's why I'm not anybody's teacher. Because all I can do is be the best parrot that I can be for T and Do's teachings and the mind that was surrounding all the words that they used, which I can only identify because of all the other teachings that collaborate the way that I expand in words some things. I'm not really expanding on the teachings. I'm talking about the same things, but T and Do give us the overview. They give us a short little sentence, and we can see an awful lot from that sentence. And they still say things in different ways over and over again to help us get that broaden our mind opening. Then S. Chazal says, we are vulnerable to our angers and to the hatreds and violence of others. Well, only our vehicles are vulnerable to the angers. Absolutely, right? Our minds don't have to be vulnerable to those angers and the hatreds and violence of others. Our spirit doesn't have to be. Our spirit and mind are synonymous according to T and Do. So, and spirit and mind, mind is that's why Jesus was the Word, right? The Word was made flesh. That was saying that the mind, the Holy Spirit, is the mind from the next level. It's the Holy Spirit. It's the divine mind. The divine thinking, the pathway to becoming a member of the next level is by following the teachings and the behaviors and ways taught through the record books, through those previous older members from the next level in their incarnations. And by putting that into motion, we gain their mind, and that also gives us perspective of how that works. To put it into motion and then know it. It becomes ours. And that we can give it away to other people then. If they draw it from us. But they're not really drawing from us if we are demonstrating the teachings from Tiendo. Then we just happen to be the instrument that's delivering Tiendo's information to somebody. That if they ponder it and then wonder about it, and in their own privacy or whatever, ponder it with wanting to know whether it's true or not, then the next level can give them the gift of knowing that it's true. Even though they might not be able to express it very well, or even recognize it until certain experiences in the human kingdom, like you might see something in the news, or a story about anything, who knows what, can become a trigger, and all of a sudden you think, oh, now that makes sense. And Truth in the World says, Eschazel, I sort of agree, but there are many here that are not willing to allow sovereignty of individuals, and fear is the ultimate tool of control. Yep. We don't want to be under human thumbs. I mean, we'll be under the thumb to a degree in order to stay alive. We don't want to offend people that, could snuff us out. But then again, we don't want to be so worried about getting snuffed out that we don't work for the next level if we believe in the next level. I mean, just trying to hide from the authoritarians, that are running the country and the world, all the countries. Most all the countries. I don't know if some of them are not very authoritarian at all. But, but not be progressing towards Tiendo's teachings, then I think we're kind of stagnating. If we just get comfortable. And stagnate, I could be too comfortable right now, for all I know. I know I'm not mentally too comfortable. I don't really get off on playing music much anymore. I do it, and I have fun while I'm doing it, but I don't go out of my way to do it. And yeah, fear is what they're using. The fear of the virus, the fear of the global warming, the fear of using fossil fuels. And then they're saying that, if we don't wear a mask, we're going to be responsible for killing somebody else. What a stretch. What a stretch. As if those other people don't have a relationship with the next level. As if those other people don't have responsibility in trying to learn to cleanse their bodies so that they're not so full of toxins that they have so many ailments and have to take so many immune suppressant drugs that any little thing that comes along, any little virus that comes along, could kill them. Because they so trusted what the humans told them as being true, with all the deceit and lies, which I'm not going to get into all that, and the pushing of the vaccination programs to make them, to require people to be vaccinated. Next Level doesn't do that. Next Level gives choices. It's the Luciferians that push people into things. That mindset. The Luciferians push their thoughts on us. They don't wait for us to ask for their thinking. Same way Al Gore pushed his thoughts on us that we needed to change our ways in terms of burning of fossil fuels, or the human kingdom was going to become extinct and the planet was going to die. Which he doesn't know that at all. There's not a bit of evidence that he knows that. And he didn't give any evidence that shows that. All their evidence is consensus evidence and their models that they build with their computers, that they put the data into to get the results they want, so they can apply, so they can get the grants to show their charts on the screen. And they believe in that a lot of times. They believe in that data. But they have an interest in not seeing anything else that would challenge it. And that's throughout the human kingdom. There's people that are embedded in their religion, they're embedded in their spirituality, they're embedded in their politics, they're embedded in their science, they're embedded in their art, they're embedded in even their humanitarianism, they're embedded in their environmentalism, and they can be positives in all those things. But they can all also restrict everybody to remaining human. Because the humans, the Next Level doesn't need scientific technicians that can manipulate genes. They don't need that. They developed that, countless time before humans even existed. And they will be able to do that countless times. And they give the humans the ability to do that. That's why it escalated so fast. Knowledge increased, like Daniel talked about, happening. And that in the future, you would know, I can't talk to you about all the things Jesus said to his disciples. There's much that I have to say that you can't bear now, he said. But when I come back, I will speak plainly of the Father and not talk in parables anymore. T and Do demonstrated that. They demonstrated the fulfillment of many prophecies. All of Jesus' teachings and all of Jesus' prophecies and all the book of the Revelations, except for the things that haven't actually transpired yet entirely. But all the things actually in the book of Revelations have come to pass in different ways, shapes, and forms that you can see directly referred to in T and Do's material. I'm not going to give examples for that right now, but maybe I'll do it when I get to the next spot in this video that I really got to get to the end of. But I mean, this is valuable, I believe, because I'm sure there's a lot of people that are wrestling with these ideas and see aspects of them, but other aspects are new to them. Things are new to me all the time. Even things I thought I knew about, I realize I didn't know enough about. So Deport says, yep, while here we should comport ourselves the way we, or conduct ourselves the way a member of the next level would. Comport's a word, I don't know that word, but if it means like trying to mimic the next level behaviors and ways taught by T&O, then I'm all for you. That were also taught by Jesus, but Jesus was a different classroom. It wasn't a graduation classroom. So, I mean, depends on how fast we want to grow, whether we want to stick to what Jesus taught or, and I don't know that just sticking to what Jesus taught gets us saved. We have to separate from the human kingdom. And even talking about the next level, talking about T&O and standing for them, even has a engages the process of separating from the human kingdom, because you're going to meet people that are going to say that you're wrong and that that's upside down, and and that's going to basically, like, let's say you say that and your employer finds out about it and they don't agree with you and they thought that you believed in what they believed about something, and they might say, you know what, I think we're not, I don't want you influencing other employees with your talking about T&O. I'm not saying to talk to people at your job necessarily, because you might want to treat it like an out-of-craft task to where you want to have some security in your making of sticks. T&O called making money sticks. In order to pay for your food and lodging and, whatever. And so that you can be of service. You might be able to say some things, I'm not telling you not to say anything. And maybe you don't care if you lose that job, because maybe you can get another one. So then it wouldn't matter. Then it could be a perfect opportunity. If it comes up, But I don't think T&O would have us stand on a table in the restaurant where we work and say, T&O or But I mean, if you do that, you're probably going to get kicked out, and maybe somebody will say, what are we talking about? so I mean, I can't put a limit on it, on how you stand for T&O. But you certainly wouldn't do it by hurting somebody or threatening somebody. That I know for a fact. Or forcing them to read something, or, read this or I'm not going to, do something for you. No, it's got to come from them. Oh, it doesn't work. It doesn't work to force anybody. Though said that he wished he could force it on us, because then we would wake up and see it, and then we wouldn't need to be forced anymore once we woke up a little more. But see, that's the way it works. Because he wouldn't force something that was bad for your vehicle, or he wouldn't force you into suicide. Of course not. He didn't force any of those 38 plus 4 to lay down their vehicles. It was far from that. It was the opposite of that. They had to prove to him that they could stay in the classroom. And I saw a lot of evidence of that over the years. Many ways that I've talked about in these live streams many times, but I'm not going to talk about right now. Okay, I'm finally at the end of the chat room. Not that I've regretted any of it. Oh, well, I see there's more being added. You guys going to keep me here for 5 hours again? Geez, there's a lot that's been going on. I didn't think I thought I was at the end of the chat room. I don't know why I thought that. Okay, I think up to something I haven't talked about yet. Yes, there is only growth or death here. I agree with you, Truth in the World. Truth in the World says, you said potential. That is also an electrical term. If we change our potential, then we change our orbit within the sphere of planes. I can see, what you're saying there. Tiendo talked about orbits when we were doing checking. I don't know if you were here when I talked about checking. And every 11 minutes, we would spend 1 minute standing at a certain spot offering service by just standing there and thinking about it to Tiendo, who were in a trailer or even if they weren't living in our house or we weren't in a campsite, the phone could ring and they could call, and they could ask for messages to be sent to them, and then the people on Central would choose one or two people to, drive them the notes that were written to them, wherever they were. That's an example of how you could be of service during that minute. I mean, that minute might end up taking, translating to hours, or they might call up and say, have Logodi and Junodi bring me messages, or reports and things. Anyway, so that's the way I see the orbit. And so we thought of it as also when we did tasks, we thought of doing those tasks as an orbit so that you would follow through with things. Some people, they'll be cooking and they'll do all the cooking and everything, and then they won't come back to clean up. They'll leave it to somebody else to clean up if they have somebody else in the household. They're not completing their orbit of that task. Now, in the classroom, we didn't do all the, we did the washing of the dishes simultaneous with, because we had a crew that was big enough. So everything was being cleaned as things were being prepared. So everybody would sit down at the same time, but then you would still have the dishes that people used to eat on to clean up after that. And they would go back to the lab and finish that before they would go on to doing other things in the craft, the house, the facsimile, not facsimile, but I forgot the word to use for that, so I won't even say it. I mean, we thought of it as a spacecraft, but there was nothing that made it look like a spacecraft, inside or out. It wanted to look perfectly normal to a human that would potentially come in, because we were renting most of the time. Then Truth in the World says an electric potential is the amount of work needed to move a unit of charge from a reference point to a specific point inside the field without producing an acceleration. So you don't want to accelerate the charge. So the charge remains of the same frequency, I guess. That's the way I'm seeing that. That's interesting. Belief is inert, according to Truthing the World. I don't know how to identify that with the word inert, so I'm going to just pass by it for now, okay? Because I don't have enough chemistry background to be able to talk about belief in that way. I just never heard Tian-Do talk about it that way, so I don't have that reference there either. The Deport says, belief isn't always a constant. It can be challenged and or reinforced, ebb and flows. Well, yes, right, exactly. It's expanded. Belief, I think, becomes knowing through experience, according to Tian-Do. Experience putting things into motion, putting out energy, trying to change the things about us that we sense or believe are behaviors that are beneath us in the sense that we want to move on beyond those evolutionarily because we recognize that there is some place to move beyond. Truthing the World says, Deport, yes, that challenge is in itself a charge to shift an inertia into direction, positive or negative. Okay? Truthing the World says, or a looper holding pattern. Right. Staying in the same place. Lukewarm, according to the Book of Revelations, right? All good, 3 p.m. Okay, cool. And yes, you're still going. Wow, I said that a long time ago. El Chaze, the mountain sounds analogous. That's what I was saying, analogous. Analogous. I'm not saying that right, I'm sorry. Analogous? Something just sounds weird about that. Analogy? Analogous? Analogy? Analogous. All right. To Maslow's hierarchy of needs, self-actualization being both the peak and transcendence of the human condition. It's also similar to Hindu-Buddhist concept of nirvana. Yeah, I can believe that. Metamorphosis. Well, hierarchy of needs, though, I wouldn't put it on the needs level, except as a requirement to move ahead. You have to make you have to foster that being required by us. So you have to have the discipline to say, no, I don't want to use that substance anymore because every time I do, I wake up on the floor vomiting or something, you know what I mean? So you have to build the need to change. That's what I'm getting at. I don't know if that relates to that. Still a human experience, though. Yes, it's all a human experience. Agreed. And then Israel D. Gore Vera 2, Genius 2, says fragments of Comet Atlas will hit the Earth soon. I hadn't seen anything like that. I didn't know that. If you can point me to a link where it talks about that, I'd love to hear it. Is Israeli News talking about that? Prometheus. Oh, is that a channeler or a spirit worker? Or a Farsight person? You know, from working for the remote viewers? Because if it is, I I don't put a lot of stock in it because I think Atlas was, well, Tiendo taught that the space aliens and the spirits on the Earth aren't allowed to go beyond the near space around Earth. Now, I don't know how far that near space extends and whether it extends to Atlas. But since comets are used by the next level, I don't think the next level would let humans or space aliens or spirits have any influence over comets and even their particles. But I'm not saying it's not possible that a fragment could hit the Earth. So I'm not saying that it's not true. I just don't have that information from anything Tiendo taught. I don't make up things that I mean I do interpretations of the Bible things that Tiendo didn't talk about. So in that way, in a sense, I'm making something up. But I try very hard not to make something up that would be different than what Tiendo might say about it, about what it means, what it can mean, because it's not necessarily one meaning. A lot of times there's a lot of meanings to many of the prophecies, or a number of them, maybe not a lot. Maybe Doe's service in the Army helped develop his excellent communication skills. Yeah, it's possible. But also his being a choral director requires good communication skills. So, for people to really want to do their best. And I was in his chorus in the classroom because we had a chorus. T gave instructions for Doe to create the chorus and to look, because she said that it would teach us to look to Doe. And we did a pretty good job at, I think, we did 4-part harmonies, right? Anyway, so L. Chaziel says, I'm still not saying that right, I know. And everyone in the chat as well. Oh, he says, I appreciate your thoughtful reflection on everything that has been said, Sawyer. And everyone in the chat as well. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I know I can get a little bit riled up about some things, but it's not because it's just because I get excited about trying to find ways to say things that are accurate to Tiendo's information that can help people understand more about what they're saying so that they will, for themselves, go to the Tiendo information and see what it says to them. And listening to the audio tapes, listening to, there's 196 audio tapes of Tiendo teaching in the classroom internally. It wasn't meant for the public. Well, it wasn't initially designed for the public. It was designed for the class members. But Tiendo left it behind, so it's meant for the public. And they talked about how we were to deposit thoughts. That was one of the reasons souls were coming back to do. Take over a human vehicle, deposit thoughts, and grow our minds. Form a better bond to our older members. I'm not saying that in the right words, but that was the idea. Form a commitment, a bond. As Chazal says, I am going to say something, and I do not mean to be disrespectful here to anyone, but in the teachings of Tiendo, I see something I recognize as Gnostic Christianity. Oh, you're not the first one. That's not disrespectful, because was the knowing. Gnostic, was the truth, or the secrets, right, were being expressed. And Jesus said a lot of things that you can see more behind, but the way that refers to like the Gospel of Thomas and Philip, and isn't necessarily dependable as being coming directly from Jesus. Unless we can relate what they say to something that Jesus said, it can also be tainted by the Luciferian space alien fallen angels' souls that were allowed to dilute and distort the teachings of Jesus so that we would have the choice to gravitate towards the opposite if we wanted to. That's what gives us the free will. If they didn't provide the distortion, we wouldn't have to work so hard to figure out what the truth is, and we wouldn't be able to see what the older members would come back and, well, I shouldn't say that much about it. We wouldn't be able to see the distortions of it and come out of the religions. I mean, when I say come out of the religions, that doesn't mean that you can't be part of a community that call themselves Christians in some denomination and enjoy that fellowship that you have. But if they tell you what to think and what not to think, what to study and what not to study, then it's time to go if you want to continue to grow. Or just don't talk to them about it and continue to grow on your own. You know, I'm not saying that anybody... religions are killers of souls because of how they entrap people into a limited thinking about the past records and how they apply to now. Like many Christian churches teach mostly from the Old Testament, because teaching from the New Testament is too hard. How can you teach somebody to lay down their life, even for the even if the enemy is, rather than take up arms to have self-defense? Well, the Old Testament teaches self-defense because they required it. They forced Moses into that. Well, I don't know. Maybe that's not true. Maybe that's not true, that part of it. And that was regarding adultery. They, because their hardness of hearts, he gave them the option to divorce their partner because of the partner's indulgence in, or your own, or maybe your own indulgence with propagating with somebody else, sexually propagating with somebody else, or committing to somebody else when you had committed to this one person to be your partner. Where God is joined together by that commitment, man shouldn't turn asunder. So somebody else shouldn't influence us to break up with somebody else, with our partners. I mean, we can work through things like that. We have a platonic partnership, in terms of wanting to also overcome our sexuality. I don't know if it would be easy to do with a partner. Well, it could be done, I think. With somebody that you're actually living with and once had sexuality with, could you overcome having sexuality with them again? I think so. I think a lot of people do that in old age, automatically, because they can't have sex anymore. Well, they don't want to. It's not fun anymore. Too much work or whatever. I have studied many Gnostic forms of Christianity in universities, and one in particular more so than most. That is the Mandaean faith. I don't understand. I don't know what that is. I haven't studied that. They are the followers of John the Baptist. Oh, I've heard about that. They do not place prohibitions on reproduction or look at bodies as fundamentally sinful, like some other ascetic Gnostic sects did. Hence why they have existed for more than 2,000 years. Right, right. Well, Jesus wasn't saying at that point that propagation and reproduction was wrong, but they were saying that the angels didn't do it. And that's why Jesus taught that to even have lust for somebody else in your heart was committing adultery. He was trying to upgrade people's control over their sexuality and promiscuity. And they gave the divorce laws in order to give some order to people's otherwise promiscuity, so that they weren't being like dogs running around impregnating people and then not having any responsibility for that, or and when he said that those who are accounted worthy of the, that world, talking about coming back as a student for the graduation classroom, and the world to come, the world to be, which meant the to have a task on one of the many mansions, many dwelling places that Jesus talked about, preparing for his students in outer space. In my Father's house are many mansions. That's in the heavens he's talking about. And if it was not so, I would not tell you that. So those that are counted worthy to attain to that neither marry nor are given in marriage. Now, marriage was based on propagating. That's what a marriage was. I'm not saying that there couldn't have been two people together committed to one another that might have been having sex and never had a baby. If that's the way it happens, that's the way it happens. You didn't need to break off with them to have a baby with somebody else. I don't think the next level would have required that. But then again, maybe that didn't happen because maybe the vehicles were pretty healthy. In terms of that, not so filled with toxins that abort babies and through. Well, I don't know if they were doing abortions then. I wouldn't be surprised if there were people that, maybe not in an Israeli camp, but even in an Israeli camp, they might have done something like that to themselves. I know my vehicle's grandmother, her sister, aborted her baby many times. I don't know many times, but a number of times, more than two, I think. Because there were people that, kind of specialized in that. Of course, they wouldn't always get it right, and sometimes the person would die, but the idea of the pleroma and syzygy in Valentinian and other Western Gnostic sects is similar to somewhat I hear about Tiendo in the next level. Well, I wouldn't at all be surprised by that. If you ever want to put like something together, I'd like to look at it and make a post about it. Because Tiendo provided us with the lost books of the Bible and the Nag Hammadi library and whatever we had access to from the Dead Sea Scrolls and the works of the Essenes. And no, Tiendo actually didn't provide that to us. Do did, after T left her vehicle. Because T didn't, that wasn't the focus of T. T's focus was getting Do going and getting the students to make their commitment to Do, which was, duplicated, described in Revelation chapter 12. Because Do said that T was the woman in Revelation chapter 12. I've made a lot of videos about a lot of the scriptural references to everything I've been talking about tonight on this channel. And they can be done better, but, they are what they are. Good morning, Sawyer, from Mr. John. Oh, yeah, you always come around this time. I see maybe there's another person that I say that to. Yeah, I have to bring this to a close in a few minutes. Sorry about that, but it's been it has its value, and so I appreciate, as Shazle, your experience and your questions and your comments. I take comments as questions, even if they're not questions, because I want to bring what I can from what I got from T and Do about it. And that as Chakal is saying, and that the archons and principalities are elements of control that debase the soul and make recognition of the spirit hard for people. Okay, I would say that in different ways myself, but I understand the principalities and elements of control that do the debasing of the soul. Yes, and that's the human kingdom is wrought with that. And the discarnates are, that come from the humans are programmed to do that in different ways and to different degrees. And that the recognition of the spirit that's hard for people then is the recognition, in my mind, the way I interpret it, is the recognition of the spirit from the mind of the members of the next level, their mind. Their mind is the mind that was written down by Jesus, and the mind that was given, that Jesus approved, that showed was from Moses. Not everything that Moses said was applicable to now, because that wasn't the path that it took. I don't think, right? Because that was the classroom then. So when they were talking about what to eat, what not to eat, Jesus updated that by saying it doesn't matter what you eat, it's what comes out of your mouth that's important. But then T and Do updated that to say that in the 90s that the best longevity can be found by having the Transfiguration diet, which was a vegan diet with only slow cooked grains, so that they weren't killing the enzymes in the grains. And strong supplementation by superfoods of like cayenne pepper and garlic and honey, and in moderation, in degrees of application, which I've talked about before many times, but I don't want to go into too much detail with now. But if you want to ask me about it, you can always send me an email to SawyerHG, as in Heaven's Gate, SawyerHG@yahoo.com. I do have all T and Do's materials available for somebody that's got the space on their computer system for up to I guess as much as like 8 gigabytes worth of data. It's all compressed into 4 gigabytes in 2 files that I have. If you ask me for it and tell me what email address to send it to, I'll send you packets. I'll send anybody packets, and there's no charge or anything like that, because they were provided by T and Do. That made way to me through Rick Odie, and Carlin also provides, and Mark and Sarah should provide, but don't. Well, in my opinion, should, but don't. Thank you for all your time they don't provide it all. They provide some. They've got a Heaven's Gate Vimo account that has a whole bunch of videos posted, Beyond Human series, which I was glad to see, even though I've been using the ones posted on Heaven's Gate database on YouTube. I don't think it's from them, and they're different videos of Beyond Human series, because I think they were made by somebody who ended up putting like episode 1 in the videos, but I don't think he or she changed anything else in them that I've seen so far. Then Truthing the World says, thank you for all your time. Really, really appreciate it. You're welcome, Truthing the World. It's my pleasure. I'm not going to get back to the other. I was playing that video that you see on the screen there, and I didn't change it from that. But you can go to that website. I think you can figure it out by searching on YouTube for it and see what they said. And you can also see the comment I left for the host. Two or three comments I left for people there on that page, and I'm going to do more of it. I'm going to try to do some at least every time. But if there's somebody in the chat room that's got a lot of questions and things, I want to put my priority on that, because to me that's more important than covering the things that Mark and Sarah, I believe, could have said differently and better, and maybe shouldn't have even said at all, which is the next statement that they say in this video, where they're asked if there's any evidence of those teachings, and they said not for mankind, which, I mean, Jesus' teachings are evidence of those teachings. So I don't know why they're overlooking that. All right. Good night.